Hey guys, Thandiwe Muriu here. Welcome to my channel. We're currently talking about photography basics for beginners, and today we're going to talk about how to shoot in bright light. If this is your first time here, thank you for watching. Please hit the subscription button below to get more of my beginner videos every Monday and Thursday. If it's not your first time here, I do thank you for your continued support. Now, shooting in bright light is very different from shooting in low light. It's a complete opposite. What do you do in a situation where your camera settings or the exposure of your pictures is too bright? Have you ever had a situation where you're shooting and you look at the back of your camera and your pictures are almost white, or there's barely anything showing, just a lot of white? That means your images are overexposed, meaning there's too much light. So how do you solve that problem? There is three main ways I do this. Number one is using my shutter speed, and that's the fastest and easiest way to control shooting in bright lights. Because there's so much light hitting your camera sensor, you need to make your shutter speed faster so that the light has less time to hit your sensor, which makes your pictures darker. If you want to know more about shutter speed, you can click on this link or check on the description box below for a video that explains that in full. Now, the added benefit of increasing your shutter speed is that it freezes motion. So if you're shooting anybody running or jumping, you can actually freeze them midway through that movement without getting any blur in your images. The second thing I use when shooting in bright light is my ISO. Kenya generally has very sunny weather, so most of the time when I'm outdoors, I'm shooting with ISO 100. And what that means is that your film or your sensor is less sensitive to the light reaching it. So it's absorbing less of the light available, which helps make your pictures darker. ISO 100 has the added benefit of less noise in your picture, so that the pictures are more crisp and clear. Again, you can use this link to go to a video that explains that, or check in the description box below. The third thing I use when shooting in really bright light is my aperture. Now this one is slightly more complicated because when you shoot with your aperture wide open, that's f2.8, f1.2, f1.8, you have beautiful depth of field, but at the same time it lets a lot of light into your camera. As always, I have a link to a video explaining what depth of field is over here or in the description box below. Now, you can reduce the light reaching your sensor by increasing your f-stop, that is making the hole in your lens much smaller so less light can travel through to your sensor. So that would mean going to f22 or even just up to f8, f11, and that should really help reduce the brightness of your pictures. But at the same time, it means more will be in focus in your pictures, which may make them less artistic and may not quite make them as stylistic as you may want them to be. The last thing I use is something called a lens hood, and I have one here. This is a lens hood, and you can actually take it off your lens, right? There we go. And this is really helpful in situations where you're shooting in bright light and you're shooting into the sun. So the sun is in front of your camera and it's shining into your lens. Sometimes you'll notice like a big blurry spot of color as you are trying to shoot, and the lens hood kind of helps block off light from directly hitting the lens, so it gets rid of the lens flare that you may see in your pictures. I don't actually use this very often, only if I'm shooting into the light. When I'm shooting in bright light, I actually prefer to have my subjects stand with the light on their backs, so that it gives them a nice rim light, a nice light around the edges of their hair, and you can usually see through the hair, on their shoulders, and that really helps separate them from the background of the picture, and it makes it just look nicer. So I don't really have use for a lens hood often. A quick mention, sometimes you'll be shooting in bright light, which means you're shooting in a really hot place, for example like Magadi, and one of the things you must make sure to do is keep your lenses out of the sun. So sometimes when I shoot, I honestly have an umbrella over my gear, because if it's really hot, your lenses can melt or your camera can just get a bit cranky. So make sure that you protect it from direct sunlight. When I shoot weddings, and let's say it's a garden wedding, I'll actually make sure to put a jacket or a cloth over my gear bag to make sure that it's not heating up really quickly, because that can damage your gear. To some of you, this may sound like really boring stuff, but it's actually the exposure triangle, which is your ISO, shutter speed, and aperture, and I explained it in this video in practical application. So understanding the exposure triangle helps you to shoot in many different situations and have very different styles in your work, which is a great thing as a photographer. So the exposure triangle is really important because it helps you practically be able to shoot in low light situations or bright light situations. It also helps you add more stylistic devices to your photography using depth of field and noise and freezing or showing motion. And you can find links to videos explaining all of those terms here or in the description box below. So I hope that was really helpful for you. If you have any questions or comments about what we've talked about in this video, you can write them in the comment section below, or you can connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, or Snapchat, or my website, www.thandiwemuriu.com. Links to all of those are in the description box below, which is below the thumbs up button. If you're a professional photographer, please do give us your own experience in shooting in bright light and how you deal with that situation. I would love to get a conversation going. As always, any gear mentioned in this video is linked in the description box below, so you know where to get it. If you're new to this channel, please hit the subscribe button so that you can get my videos every Monday and Thursday. Right now we're doing a series for beginners. If this is not your first time here, I am very thankful for your support and I hope to see you next time. Bye guys.